The fourth town meeting. That night, the wind cleaned the smoke from the air, and in the morning the sky was a brilliant blue and the air felt tingly. The sunlight was warm, but it had a new quality, thinner and sharper. The season was changing. A messenger from town arrived at the hotel that morning. Doone, who happened to be the first person up, ran into him on the hotel steps. "Tell your people," said the messenger, "that the leaders of Sparks wish to meet with the people of Ember at noon today. They will come to the hotel ballroom." Doone conveyed this message to the next several people he saw, and they told others, and soon everyone knew. At noon they assembled in the ballroom. Doone stood with his father in the midst of the crowd. All around him he heard uneasy murmurings. Would this be more bad news? He heard Miss Thorne whisper to someone, "I'm so nervous, I have a stomachache." He was nervous too, his hands were damp. At a few minutes after 12, Mary Waters and Wilma Dent came into the ballroom. With them were 4 men carrying a stretcher on which Doone saw a blanket-draped figure. The stiff grey beard jutting up from the chin told him it was Ben Barlow. Dr. Hester walked beside him, and with her were Mrs. Murdo, Lena and Poppy. Other townspeople followed, lining up around the edges of the room. Doone recognised storekeepers and team leaders, including Chugga, along with many of the families of Sparks. The Partons were there. He saw Kenny trotting behind his parents. Doone raised his arm and called to Lena, and she came to stand beside him. "Is Ben badly hurt?" Doone whispered. "I think so," Lena whispered back. "The doctor says he was hit in the shoulder. She said the blast almost blew off his arm." "Listen," said Doone. "I have to tell you something important." And in the next few minutes, as the town leaders and the men carrying Ben mounted the steps to the stage, he whispered to Lena what he'd discovered about Tick. "Really?" she kept saying. "Really? How could he? I can't believe it." "And last night," Doone whispered, "I went and found Tick, and I told him I knew, and he said—" But at that moment Mary Waters held up her hands for quiet. Doone stopped whispering and turned his eyes to the stage. The men had set the stretcher down and propped one end of it on a chair so that Ben lay at a slant. A bandage covered one of his eyes. He glared out at the audience with the other. When Mary spoke, there was a slight quaver in her deep voice. "We are here to talk of serious matters," she said. "Ben was badly injured yesterday, but he has insisted on coming. We all wish to speak with you face to face." She paused. "First of all, I must tell you this." Doone felt his stomach lurch. "We have realised," Mary said, "that we cannot ask you to leave here. Your generosity yesterday has helped us remember our own." No one spoke, but the people of Ember glanced at each other and let out breaths of relief. Doone bumped his shoulder against Lena's and they grinned. "Yesterday," Mary went on, "when our weapon exploded and the fire went out of control, a child of Ember crossed the line that divided us from each other. We are grateful to her for leading the way." "Lena! Lena!" cried a few scattered voices. Lena thought she heard Maddie's voice among them. Doone startled her by yelling, "Lena the Brave!" right in her ear. "I want to say," Mary continued, "that we have made mistakes and we are sorry for them. We had good intentions at the beginning. We did our best to help you, but when it got hard, we closed our hearts." Wilma Dent smiled apologetically. "We were worried," he began. Ben interrupted him. His voice was hoarse and he was weak, and he seemed to be having trouble breathing. Doone strained to hear him. "We were justifiably concerned," he croaked, "about critical food shortages, attempting to ensure the safety of our own people." He made a kind of wheezing, gasping sound. "Understandably," he added. Wilma shrugged his shoulders, still smiling nervously. "It was just that we were afraid," said Mary. "We were afraid. Let us say it right out. We were afraid that you would ruin everything for us. We were almost on the edge of prosperity. We feared that you would push us back into deprivation." There was a silence then in which no one knew what to say. "So we tried to get rid of the problem instead of solving it," Mary went on. "Fortunately, both our plans and yours were thwarted." She stepped forward and gazed out into the crowd. Her eyes met Doon's and held them for a second. "Just last night," she said, "I learned 2 things that have changed my picture of what has happened here. The first is this. We still don't know who wrote the muddy words on the plaza. We may never know. But the other attacks on the people of Ember, the ugly writings on the wall of the Pioneer and the poison oak on the doorsteps, were not carried out by Spark villagers at all." The Emberites turned to each other with a puzzled look and murmured, confused. But what does she mean?" "It was Doon Harrow who explained it to me," said Mary. "I'd like him to explain it to us all, if he will." She nodded to Doon and gestured upward with her hand, so Doon stood up. He told the assembled people the same thing he'd told Mary the night before when he came to her house late in the evening. "It can't be true," someone cried out. Doon thought it was Ali Bright, who had been Tick's right-hand man. "It is true," Doon said. "Tick told me himself last night. He said it was just a good strategy. He said he knew there was going to be war and he needed to raise a strong army. When people are attacked, he said, they get mad, and angry people are the best warriors. So he decided to make people angry. He told me he got a good idea for how to do it when he saw those muddy words in the plaza." At that, a roar swelled up and filled the ballroom. People shouted, "Where is he?" and twisted around to look for Tick. A few of them began barging through the audience trying to find him. Doon called out, "Wait! Listen! He isn't here." The commotion quieted down. People turned toward Doon. "Last night, when I talked to him, Tick was stuffing everything he owns into a sack," said Doon. "He told me he was leaving. He said he couldn't live any more with cowards and traitors. He had heard Aroma was coming through the village today and he planned to catch a ride with him. Some others are going too. They're going to the settlement in the far south. Tick said, where they hope to find a better welcome than they got here." A great clamour greeted this announcement. Some people laughed and some shouted, "Good riddance!" and some just grumbled and shook their heads. Finally, Mary raised her hands again and called, "Please, quiet, I have more to say." People grew silent again and listened. "I said that I'd learned 2 things," she said. "The second is this. The incident that set off this chain of violent events did not happen as we thought. It was not Doon Harrow who destroyed those crates of tomatoes." This came as no surprise to the people of Ember, who had never believed Doon guilty in the first place. But the villagers at the meeting looked startled. Doon saw Martha Parton flick her eyes towards him, her eyebrows flying upward, and she saw Ordney give him a quizzical look. Behind them, Kenny smiled a sunny smile. "Torrin Crane has taken back the statement he made," Mary said. "He did not, after all, see Doon Harrow throw those tomatoes. He still refuses to say who did throw them. We must make up our own minds about that, but I believe we can be sure that it was not a person from Ember." At that, a cheer arose from the crowd, a loud, disorderly cheer, and Doon was so astonished that he nearly fell over. Lena grabbed his arm. "I made him write it down on paper," she yelled into his ear. "I took the paper to Mary last night." When the cheering subsided, Mary continued. "We should take note," she said, "of how easy it is to bring out the worst in us. The actions of a few troubled individuals founded resentments into violence. Only an accident kept us from murdering each other." She turned around to face Ben, whose head was lolling sideways, his eyelids drooping. "Ben has something to say now. Ben, are you able?" The doctor, standing next to Ben, nudged his shoulder gently, and Ben opened his eyes. "Can you make your statement, Ben?" asked Mary. Ben frowned at the ceiling. The audience waited. Finally he spoke. "I've been told," he said, "that Doon Harrow—" He stopped, frowning again. "I wish to thank—" Young man named Doon Harrow, he took a shaky breath, for rescuing foolish nephew. What? Thought Doon. What's he talking about? Ben scowled. He appeared to be gathering his strength. Foolish nephew Torrin Crane, he rasped. In the pine tree. Who could have been killed? Ben's voice sank to a whisper and the audience strained to hear. By my foolish actions. Doon stood stunned. Torrin was Ben's nephew? That was a surprise, but it was even more of a surprise to hear Ben almost apologising for what he'd done. Lena was thumping Doon on the back. Someone behind him cried out, 3 cheers for Doon! And 3 cheers rung out in the ballroom. Doon just stood there with what he thought was probably a silly smile on his face. Then Mary stepped forward and called for quiet again. Her voice grew steady and businesslike. Now, she said, we must look to our future. You will not get everything you want. Neither will we. All of us will suffer, perhaps even be in danger. There will be more mouths to feed, but more hands to do the work too. And though we may have a shortage of food, we have no shortage of work. She paused. She smiled a little. Her eyes passed over the people in the room, and Doon felt her gaze almost like a reassuring touch. The main thing she said is this. We will refuse to be each other's enemies. We will renounce violence, which is so easy to start but so hard to control. We will build a place where we can all live in peace. If we hold to that, everything is possible. Someone clapped. Doon turned around and saw his father, clapping with his hands held high in the air. There is much to be worked out, Mary said. It won't be easy, but we'll talk about it together. She paused for a second and a change came over her face, the beginning of a smile. One more thing, she said. We will no longer speak of the people of Sparks and the people of Ember. From now on, we are all the people of Sparks. A rustle swept through the crowd. Both Doon and Lena felt a pang of sorrow. To call themselves people of Sparks meant leaving behind the last trace of their old home, its name. The villagers too felt a pang. For them, it was a pang of fear. These were their people now. Could they really live peacefully together? But the sorrow and the fear lasted only a few seconds. Everyone was tired of sorrow and fear. Whatever lay ahead, they thought, would probably be better. They were willing to try it. After that, they turned to the practical details. Actually, said Alma Hogan, the storehouse manager, there's a fair amount of food in the storehouse.